I'd like to introduce you to our first speaker, Mr. James D. MacKenzie. He's a leading expert in the design and delivery of interactive training and private coaching. He speaks on topics that range from how to present yourself to how to successfully resolve conflicts in a professional setting. So what I'd like to do right now is just without further ado, bring up Mr. MacKenzie. Thank you so much for joining us. Please welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Cottle. Thanks so much. Appreciate it. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jamie MacKenzie, and for 17 years, I've been coaching folks in the corporate world on communication skills. That ranges from presence to presentation, and my clients include people in all different industries. This is somewhat of a first, so I want to thank Dr. Pedowitz and the board for taking a flyer on me to bring me in and help a group of physicians with your communication skills. Now, full disclosure, in my early career as a consultant, I spent a lot of time with some of the big pharma organizations, training the bright, shiny, young health science associates who would come in and try to get your minds wrapped around various drugs that might be in the pipeline and the like. So I have a fair amount of experience training scientists in pharma companies, training people in medical device, and also both of my parents, who were attorneys, did a huge amount of medical malpractice defense in their careers in Michigan back in the 70s and 80s. So their offices and our home were always filled with physicians, and I have a great love for your profession. I'm here today to give you an overview of communicating with presence. It's not about a presentation skills class for all of you. I know that some of you present formally and publicly frequently, and most of you may not. Presence is something different. It's a little more intangible. So what is presence? Presence is any time that you're not alone. What messages are you sending to other people about what kind of person you are? And if you're not alone, that's happening. So how people see you, how they hear you, and the judgments they make about you based on all of those issues, those intangible issues. And people all over my career for 17 years, and before that I was an actor on Broadway, so what I know about presence is fairly large. People have been telling me for years, you can't teach charisma. You can't teach charisma, Jamie. But the reality is I can, and I do. And I will today. It's a set of learnable skills and tools. Now, why would you hire a consultant guy who works with corporate types at Goldman Sachs and Nomura and Deutsche Bank and law firms like Milbank Tweed or whatever to come in and work with a group of physicians? Well, when you're in front of people, the stakes are extraordinarily high. So as Dr. Pedowitz explained to me, his whole goal for the whole year that he takes over the organization is to help you enhance your communication, to make sure that in all of your interactions within the hospital, with your colleagues, with your patients, with nurses, anybody that you deal with, you're enhancing those relationships, that you're building a sense of trust with people. He wants, and I say this all the time to everybody I coach, he wants you to talk to folks. There's so much electronic communication, and some of it going on right now. But there's so much electronic communication in our world today that it's hard to remember that your impulse to respond to that text or to respond to that email might be better served by picking up the phone or running down the hallway and grabbing that person for a quick face-to-face. So we're going to go through a series of best practices. I'll show you the agenda in just a moment. And I guarantee you that you will find that the 2 hours I'm in front of you today contain several very practical, useful, and simple and easy to apply tools and skills. You'll be able to walk out into the exhibition hall on the break and apply some of these things as you have conversations with those folks out there in the hall. So here's a list of randomly chosen great communicators. You can't really make any political assumptions about me based on who's on this list. You see Winston Churchill up there and Ronald Reagan, whose nickname was the Great Communicator. Then you have President Clinton, and the President Obama seems to veer widely between soaring speech giver to wonky professorial guy who stammers and hesitates and hems and haws. Then we have Steve Jobs, very interesting communicator, not like any of the rest of them. Diane Sawyer, Oprah, and of course Tom Hanks. So what happens in the room when these people speak, different from anybody else? Just call it out, try to make me hear it. What do they do? What's the magic that they make happen that other people don't as communicators? They make you like them. There was a part at the beginning. They lie, yeah. A little bit of political agenda there, but okay. I don't know if Oprah lies, but she might. So what else happens? Besides they make you like them. And they might actually move forward on an agenda that people, Ronald Reagan convinced the whole country we needed to invade Grenada, right? For our national security. I've been to Grenada. Has anybody else been to Grenada? I met someone. Yeah, it's lovely, but I don't feel it's a threat, right? Then what happens when Oprah endorses a book? People buy the book. So what I do is commonly called or characterized as the soft skills. And I really hate that moniker because there's nothing soft about leadership. And if you're going to lead, and leadership means you get to people to follow your lead, then you have to be able to communicate well and clearly and build trust. So what these people effectively do is build trust. And notice how fundamentally different one is from the other. Churchill to Steve Jobs, generationally, just the whole style, radically different. But you can just picture Steve Jobs on the stage in the black jeans and the black turtleneck, and he slips the iPod Nano out of his pocket, and the crowd goes wild, right? Almost doesn't have to say anything. Very different from a soaring politician, right? So you, a more effective communicator in all your meetings, all your calls, to make sure that when you ask for something from a colleague, when you request a patient to follow a particular procedure that you want them to have or to take a medicine that you're looking to prescribe to them, that they trust you, that they like you, that in every interaction, and frankly, the customer service, and this is what bedside manner effectively is customer service. The customer service surveys always tell you that it's the act of one person who gets a little snippy, doesn't take enough time, doesn't return your phone call, doesn't give you an email, who causes you to slam down the phone and say, "That's it, Verizon is dead to me," right? And you've done it. I know you've done it because of one person's action. If you listen and take in and practice the skills that I'm putting out there for you today, I guarantee it will never be because of your actions that happens, that somebody decides to shop for another doctor. I will say I have shopped for another doctor based on the staff of a doctor that I liked very, very well. And I'm still with him, but one of these days I just have to tell him that his staff is making me crazy. What does present look like? If I could have you tell me what charisma is, what are the elements that make up charisma for people? Call it out for me. What does a person physically need to do to create a sense of charisma? Here's someone coming down the aisle. He looks very charismatic. No? I would bring someone up. I'd have to give them my microphone, but I would bring someone up if they were willing to introduce themselves to the group, and you could talk about what makes charisma. But I think the microphone is a bit of a challenge because it's underneath my jacket, and I don't want to take my jacket off in front of all of you. So let me tell you what breaks it down, what it's broken down into. Elements of eye contact, body language, vocal energy, a sense of ease and relaxation, language itself, and something less tangible called energy. Energy is like electrical current running through your body, and it can be very, very quiet and slow, or it can be very, very loud and much, much bigger. So that's what we mean when we talk about presence. Now we have to break it down for you. Here's the agenda, which is pretty action-packed for only 2 hours. We got almost everything but the kitchen sink into Rob's proposal here today. Presence, relaxation, focus, and energy. How many of you get nervous when you have to have a difficult conversation with a patient? Show of hands, right? And who's good in the room, show of hands, at creating a sense of relaxation when everything else is spinning out of control? People are going crazy around you, right? So how do you maintain relaxation when everybody else is going crazy around you? Just call it out. Slow down. What else? Make some physical contact. What else?
Accentuate the positive aspect.
Yeah, here's some positive we can hang on to. I like that. What else? Your tone. Who's had yoga or Pilates or meditation? What do you do in yoga to relax? You breathe, yeah. Some of you may have breathed before, but we're going to break it down for you today. Focus and energy, eye contact and body language. Then we'll talk about connecting with others. There's some items in the deck of all the slides you're going to see is online for you. And so you'll have it as a resource to remember these things and be able to practice them on your own. That will be on you after we leave here today. So selling your ideas, how to persuade someone in a clear way to follow your lead, to get a particular action step to happen, whatever that might be. Our roadmap toward structuring a persuasive pitch to create a response that you're looking for. Then, listening skills. Because the heart of bedside manner has to be listening skills. So you've probably heard that. I'm going to cover it in 3 minutes, but I want you to make sure that you're applying good listening skills. Even though you only have 15 minutes with a patient, maybe even less, you've got to be able to build trust by using active listening. Then leveraging your communication style. So who's familiar with the Myers-Briggs or the DISC assessment or one of those communication styles assessments? So what we're going to do after the break is give you a chance to see who you are in the world, and then who are all these other animals that may or may not be like you, and how can you adjust your behavior in order to be more successful with them? Because in my world, you can only control your own behavior. If you married someone thinking you were going to change him or her, good luck with that, right? Then, adapting your style. What are some ways that you can not only identify what style you're dealing with, but then shift your behavior into their comfort zone so that you can be more effective with them? Effectively in a slightly Machiavellian way, adopting best practices that they find work for them so that you can get trust to build between the two of you. So transforming your presence. Here's this guy on the mountaintop giving a great big open gesture. I won't ask you to go that far in the conference room here today. But I do want you, as we practice skills, when we break out in a second, to stretch yourselves a bit, to try these skills on for size. Some of these things may make you very uncomfortable. And that means I'm succeeding. Because my job as a coach is to take people who've been doing something since they were born and blow it up and then put it back together in a more effective way so that you can be more effective with other people. 3 principles of presence for you today. We have relaxation, focus, and energy. So here's this woman. She's not really on the beach. She may be in the OR. And things are really not going all that well. But somehow, she's created an oasis of calm. So what are the fundamentals of nervousness versus relaxation? Emotional and physical. The emotion is the noise in your head. That little voice that parks up here. When I was an actor on Broadway, we used to call that the critical voice. You know that voice. Does it ever say, wow, way to go, you're so good. They are so loving this. They are really having you today. I don't think so. That voice's job all the time is to chip away at your self-confidence. And the most confident people I know, CEOs that I've coached privately, managing partners of law firms, you name it, all over the world have told me that certain things push their buttons and make them nervous. So my job as the coach is to turn down the volume on that voice that makes you nervous and replace that voice with other voices that support the overall enterprise of strong and confident communication. Then, the physical. What you're doing physically changes your physiology. There's a great TED Talk on YouTube by a woman named Amy Cuddy about body language. Has anybody seen it? It's 20 minutes of your life you'll never get back again. I guarantee you, you will find it extraordinarily useful. The woman's name is Cuddy, C-U-D-D-Y. It's on YouTube in the TED Talks. So physically what you're doing can either build your nervousness and enhance that nervous energy and cause it to snowball and spiral out of control, or what you're doing physically can calm you and relax you. You may already know this, but I'm going to show you several ways to generate calm. So what are you worried about? If you had to report to these people about something that went wrong at the hospital, or you were being interviewed, or you were giving a presentation, what's the worst fear that we all carry around? What is the fundamental gut level? I know you're all very smart and highly analytical, right? What's the gut level fear that we're all afraid of when we're in front of people? They might not like me, I might be embarrassed, or I look like an idiot. This happens in first grade or second grade. Some poor kid in the classroom says something profoundly stupid, and people in the classroom laugh, or the teacher is shaming, or the nun gets upset, or whatever it is, right? And at that moment, you as a child take in that shame, that fear. Every year in the book of lists, the number one fear of America is public speaking. Public speaking. Seinfeld does a great riff on this in one of his episodes where he's at a funeral and he says, because number 4 is death, right? The number 4 fear is death. Seinfeld says, if I understand this correctly, most people would rather be lying in the coffin than up here giving the eulogy. So we're all nervous in front of other people. The trick is what you're doing physically can have some control over that. Managing butterflies. We're going to breathe. So how does this breathing thing work? I learned all this from the great Kristen Linklater. She just came back from Davos where she was teaching these skills to the world leaders and the conquerors of the universe who go to Davos in Switzerland every year. So when you breathe and the lungs expand downward, they expand upward as well, but I want you to think about pushing down in the diaphragm muscle. And when I do that, this isn't particularly attractive, but look at what happens when I get a deep diaphragmatic breath down here. Good morning. How are you today? Now that's a deep breath that supports my voice, gives me a sense of confidence, and it will relax me. If you've ever heard about biofeedback, you know that deep breathing can control nerves and cause a sense of relaxation. So everybody stand up with me. Stand up for a second. And put your hand on your belly button right here, and I want you to breathe in through the mouth. I know in yoga you breathe in through the nose, and there may be a lot of particulate matter drifting up here from the casino, but I would prefer you breathe in through the mouth because I don't want to hear you breathe when you're trying to be relaxed, right? So for me, I got a lot of sinus drama going on. I don't want you to hear that and be worrying about that. So breathe in through the mouth on a count of 3, and then take 5 counts to let that air out on a loud, sibilant S like this. So you'll exhale, and then inhale slowly on 3. 1, 2, 3. And then force the air out on 5 like that. Ready with me? Exhale. Slow inhale on 1, 2, 3. Now hiss it out. It's pretty lame, gang. All right. Notice how much air there is. All right, now take 5 counts to fill the tank. Ready? And inhale on 5. You're going to feel like you're going to explode. 4 and 5. Now hiss it out for as long as you can. Loud, loud, loud. Good. Force it out, force it out, force it out, force it out. Good, good. You feel how much air there is. That air is what sustains your voice. Now find someone close by at the table. You can turn around, the two of you, turn around, find a person next to you, and in your normal tone of voice, for someone standing 2 feet away from someone, introduce yourself like this. How do you do? My name is Jamie MacKenzie. Nice to meet you. Right? Just introduce yourself to somebody at the table. Oh, good. Somebody's me out there. I love that. Excellent. So now, I want you to fill the tank with air. The secret of speaking is that you don't really need to exhale. So if I say to you, take a nice deep breath and you may begin, you don't go, how do you do? My name is Jamie MacKenzie. It's really great. If you let all the air out, there's nothing to support the voice. The way the voice works is this. The vocal cords vibrate, and those vibrations resonate in different places. When I go back to Michigan, they all park in my nose. Hi, Jamie. How are you? The nice slacks you got there. Great. Right? Or up in the head, if I were getting very ethereal and all the voice is resonating up here on my forehead in the mask, or I can park it in my throat. And I sound a little bit like that Clinton fella, right? It's all coming from the throat. Or I can begin to have that voice resonate in my chest. If I put my hand here, there's a deep vibration and a buzz. Just take a breath, put your hand right here, and on a long high go, hi, hi. Very sexy, very sexy. Now, did you feel any buzzing? If you didn't feel buzzing, then your voice is not phonating properly. All right, now I want you to take an easy breath. I don't want it to be like gasping in panic, but take an easy big breath, turn to the same person, and double the volume and use a professional voice like this. How do you do? My name is Jamie MacKenzie. Only you can use your own names this time. Okay, off you go. Okay, so here's my question. First of all, did the person that talked to you double the volume? Did they double the volume? And did it freak you out? Did anybody get freaked out by hearing a whole voice coming at them? Right? Now, I realize there are a lot of women here. My mom was the first judge on the Michigan Court of Appeals. She was a politician. And in terms of gender, if you want to maintain professionalism at all times and sound like a player to the person you're talking to, if you turn to someone who's close to you in the hallway at the hospital and go, hi, how are you? It sends all the wrong messages. You want to use your full, adult, mature voice at all times in a professional setting so that you can maintain your professionalism with other people. Okay, you may sit down. Thank you. Good. Good. Principle number 2 is focus, connecting to your audience with your eyes. Now, you may have been told, like I was in Petoskey, Michigan in the 70s, to get your eyes around to everybody in the room if you were communicating with a large group of people, right? Make sure you connect with everybody in the room. This is a disaster. So when I'm talking about eye contact, what's your name? And remind me, because we've met before. Michelina. Michelina, when I look you directly in the eyes, I could look at your forehead, or I could look at your chin, right? You wouldn't know the difference. There's a big difference for me. Because if I'm not looking someone in the eye, I don't have to talk to another live human being. I can stay in my head and I can phone it in from Cleveland. I don't even have to be here. So when you look someone in the eye, fundamental changes take place. You have to make yourself clear to that person. The language comes into focus. The punctuation is appropriate. This is why great speakers are really focused and poor speakers are unfocused. So focusing on one person at a time in a group of people, if you're at your board meeting or you're having your office meeting around the table, you would focus for 5 to 7 full seconds on each pair of eyes. Now that's going to seem like an eternity to some of you. Why is it 5 to 7 seconds? Because it's the approximate length of a complete thought. So the way I do it, even in a large group like this, is I say, good morning, my name is Jamie MacKenzie. I'm really delighted to be here. Thank you so much for coming in and giving me a chance to share some of my best practices on communication with you. And what happened between each point of eye contact physically? What else happened? I shifted my body language. No, much more important than that. A big breath. A big, deep breath to keep the relaxation and the voice going. And what else might have gone in between if I didn't breathe, right? So how many of you are afflicted with the ums disease when you say this, that? Breathing is the number one way to get rid of ums when you're speaking. Stay present. We have the self-involved thinker, the effective communicator. So when you're preparing for a meeting, you cannot communicate in that loop. It's all going around in your head. If you're leading a meeting or you had to give a presentation or you're going in to pitch an idea to someone, you want to change someone's care plan or whatever that might be, you cannot deliver information and think in a profound way at the same time. This will sound counterintuitive, but thinking is the enemy of communicating well. Thinking is the enemy. When you're communicating, you're entirely focused on the people you're talking to, and you're looking for the response. And if I'm not looking for the response, and somebody's given me shade, they're sighing, they're rolling their eyes, right? Then I've lost them and I don't even know it. But what happens is each person I look at gives me very subtle cues about how I'm doing. I get a little nod, I get a blink, I get some sense that they are living and breathing, and then I know I can move on. And frankly, for some of you this afternoon, what happened over here a minute ago, you were looking down. I chose you to look at when I said, good morning, my name is Jamie MacKenzie, and what happened? You were drawn up to me. So this is how I control the audience's attention when I'm in front of a larger group. The benefits of strong focus: you reduce nervousness, you eliminate distractions, you connect to the audience. So you reduce nervousness. No matter how large the group or how small, I'm having a series of one-on-one conversations. I start with a friendly face, I get a smile, I move on to somebody else, and I gradually expand my universe in a large group. One-on-one, I'm there 100% of the time. Unless I'm looking at my notes, I might be looking at the chart, but I'm always connected whenever I'm talking, whenever I'm listening. Did you ever walk into some administrator's office and start talking, and 1 minute in, they swivel around in their chair and they're like, no, keep going, I got to just check my email. What do you want to do? Smack them, right? Smack them. I have a friend who had, he had couple of little kids, the 4-year-old's tugging on his jacket going, Daddy, 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 and he's got the baby under his arm, and the baby here is babbling away in baby talk, making no sense whatsoever, so he turns to deal with the older child, and the baby grabs his chin, yanks it over, like, look at me when I'm babbling at you, Dad. So we don't even need language to need eye contact as a listener and as a speaker. You eliminate distractions. When I'm in my own head and I'm not connected to anybody, if a phone rang out there, my eyes are going to be drawn right to it. I will be completely derailed. If I'm focused and I'm busy making myself clear to someone, then someone coming in, a phone ringing is just noise that happens around the periphery. So I stay on my train of thought. And everyone feels taken in by this level of eye contact. So even though I can't possibly look at all of you here this afternoon, many of you will feel that I looked at you, even if I didn't physically do it, because going in this direction for a good long time will send that whole corner of the room a sense of strong eye contact. Principle number 3 is energy. Now, energy, I'm talking about body language, gesturing, your physicality, your face, and even your voice. To maximize your presence and engage and stimulate the audience. Did you ever have a professor in school who droned on and on and on and on like they were an auctioneer? I guarantee you that person was not looking people in the eye. Because it's impossible to look someone in the eye and be monotone. I have to make myself clear, which means my voice needs to do what it is naturally hardwired to do. So maximize your presence. We want you to be more expressive, to gesture with energy. Who here has been told not to talk with your hands? Show of hands. Anybody? Our Italians? Yes, we have some Italians or Greeks in the room. That's right. I give you full permission to be as Italian or Greek as you can. Because gesturing came before language and speech, and without gestures, look, everything you deal with is abstract. You're talking about a dosage, a time frame. You're talking about a procedure. Now, when I teach at Stryker Spine, they bring in a model of the spine. They have a $250,000 screwdriver that they can put those $50,000 with the screws and bolts and all that good old bone stuff into your spine with. And they bring that jazz in and they show it to the doc. They'll even bring in a cadaver. Luckily, never when I was there did I go through that, but okay. So I didn't have those things. What did you just see? The spine, the screwdriver, and like that. If I did that whole story about Stryker Spine without gesturing, it has zero impact. It's just words flowing out of, I can't even say words flowing out of my mouth without gesturing. Use facial expressions. Now, mostly that means smile. So who here is not a big smiler? I'm guessing there are probably a few of you. A lot of physicians, pretty analytical. The analytical types don't do a lot of smiling. All the way through Dartmouth College, people said to me, "MacKenzie, are you mad? Are you angry?" I was just, in my own analytical way, processing information and getting it right? Then I learned how to smile, and my whole life changed. So if you're not a big smiler, work on it. It's a skill. It's a skill. I'm not asking you to smile in an insincere way, but where's the good news? You know, there is some good news in there somewhere. What can we hang on to? Because in every culture in the world, people smile as a trust builder. And if you don't remember to smile, people are going to worry about you. They're going to think, uh-oh, something must be really wrong, right? And show your enthusiasm. Now, I will say some people smile as a nervous tic. Some of you may get nervous and go, well, it's really not going to be okay, right? So I don't want you to go there. I don't want you to go there. So we have to make, if you have a very still face, I meet people whose faces might as well be carved from granite, right? And I'm going, okay, you shake the head no. Everybody shake the head like this, like, oh, yes, and knit the brow. Let me see your, oh, this is, let me be very empathetic and clear about this, right? You got to give a little bit of a sense when I'm looking at you, is this going to be good news or bad news? Because I won't necessarily hear the words. If the face looks really serious, I may freak out and I won't even hear what you say. Gestures. You could talk about the timeline of progress and say, look, we're expecting physical therapy to last 2 weeks, then we'll get someone to come to your home for another 2 weeks, and we would think within 6 weeks you're going to be back to most of full strength after this operation or whatever. So you see the whole timeline roll out. Or you talk about locations, and you say, when we're in this hospital, we have very particular regulations we have to follow. The clinic has a separate set of regulations, and therefore I'm going to ask you to be very flexible and attentive to the differences between how you have to do it when you're here and how you have to do it when you're there. And then size and scope, a minor issue, this is not important, we don't have to worry about this, or this is a much bigger, more significant issue. Now when you're face to face, if we were 2 feet apart, I will bring those gestures into a smaller realm. The bigger the audience, the bigger my gestures will be. So I might just do this much of it. But I would say, now I'm going to make a comment about gender for the women in the audience. Women tend to minimize your presence. All demure, all petite. On the subway, the women are all like this in New York City, and the men are doing that man-spreading thing that the Times recently coined. I love that, right? Now, what I will tell you is, for the women in the room, take up your space at the table. I did a whole series of programs last year at Goldman Sachs for women, at Nomura for women, and the major women executives came down from on high and told all the young women in the audience, take up your space at the table. Do not allow yourself to be minimized, and that means vocally especially. So it's true for everybody. Don't be all collapsed and closed off. Body language is important. Paint the picture and hold it. I'll talk about conviction and excitement in a minute. If you do a gesture, if you said, look, this blood sugar number is really spiked and I'm very concerned about it, we're going to need to get you on some medication. I don't want to put that thing up there and leave it, and then I move on to something else and it looks like my hand is stapled to the wall. But I do put it up there and retract it with some energy rather than throwing the gestures around. It's not floppy and loose. My wrists are strong. My hands are like paddles. They're sort of fluid and they're moving fluidly and they're not dropping and flopping. In terms of conviction and excitement, listen to what happens to my voice if I take away the gestures. Good morning, my name is Jamie MacKenzie. I'm really delighted to be here. Or, good morning, my name is Jamie MacKenzie. I'm really delighted to be here. So the little bit of gesturing gooses the voice. I don't know why, but it works. So if you lock down your hands, your face will still and your voice will flatten out completely. Stand with authority. We want you to find a powerful stance. So you're in the hallway, you're in the cafeteria, you're having a quick confab with another doctor. We want the hands and arms open and above the waist. Your feet should be evenly distributed. Your hips should be right above both feet evenly. So stand up with me for a second. Stand up again. And put your feet hip-width apart. However wide your hips are, that's where your feet should be, underneath them directly. Now the feet should be parallel like train tracks. I don't want to turn out. This isn't ballet class, right? So I stay parallel. Now everybody go wide on me, right? Go really wide. All right, partner. right? It's a little aggressive for the conference room or the hospital. Now bring your heels tight together. Notice you don't have that strong a platform. If I give you a little nudge, you're going to go right over. Now come back and put all your weight on one hip, right? Here we go. You just give a little of that. We're at the country club. We got the martini in the hand. It's all working just the way it should. Now what happens after even this long? This hip is screaming to the other one, help me, help me. And then you go over here. And this hip has already been warned that it's going to be exhausted. So the next thing you know, you got that thing going on. So if you tend to have a lot of nervous energy, then do this little trick. Just tilt forward over the balls of your feet and then tilt back a little and then tilt forward and land over the balls of your feet and unlock your knees and just sink in a tiny bit. Most everybody's in slacks here, pants, whatever. I'm from Michigan, I can't help it. So bend the knees a tiny bit. Notice how little it is and I'm a little bit forward. See how hard it is to sway? You have to push off. So if you worry about nervous energy physically when you're up in front of people or you have an important whatever, this is a trick to keep you centered and planted. Now bring your hands out here and put them around a great big old turkey platter, right? And that platter is where all of the widgets, all the medications, the physical therapy, the whatever, all the things you're going to talk about are right out there in front of you on that platter. And you just pick them up and you use them and you say, look, there are already 5 physicians involved in this case. Can we get our minds wrapped around what the message is for the family here? So you put everything out in space where it wants to be. All right, now you may sit down. You may relax again. Thank you. Get in the game. At the conference room table, I sit forward on the chair. At an important meeting, if I'm presenting sitting down, I get forward, my hands are above the table, right? So model the behavior. Come forward, get the hands up above the table where I can trust you, because if I don't see the palms of your hands, I think you're going to kill me. Look it up in the body language books. It's absolutely scientifically proven. Now, no lacing of the fingers. Again, we got to see the palms of the hand. And pencils and pens are tools of the devil. You will click, you will pop, you will twirl. Anything in your hands will become the focus of your nervous energy. There's some baton twirling going on over here. And I've even seen the pen fly out of the person's hand and hit the physician in the face, right? So you're forward, you're upright. Now, could you sit for 2 hours at a meeting like that? Not necessarily. But when it's your moment to take over, to host, to engage, you want to get forward and upright. Why not lean back and relax? What am I telling you about me when I kick back like this? Not interested. Arrogant. Uh-oh. 1 person in 10 will usually say arrogant. And why would you ever accidentally send a message that you're arrogant? Simply because you're relaxing, right? That's all it means. I mean, if somebody has their arms folded in the room, it might just be freezing in here. It is kind of chilly in here, yeah. But that's not the point. Other people are going to see this as closed off, so you have to maintain that open forward posture whenever you're in front of people. Commit your whole self. We want you to reinforce whatever message you're delivering physically, vocally, visually with your face, to channel your energy. If you're nervous and your hands come together, then what will happen is that nervous energy will start leaking out in other places. And you'll start gesturing with your head, or you'll start gesturing with your hips or your shoulders. So you've got to release nervous energy with your hands. You have to breathe in order to release and reduce some of that nervousness. And you have to connect with your eyes so that you're not distracting yourself with a lot of excess visual imagery. So we're going to do a little drill here. And I want you to think of a 1-minute story. Please make it a true story. Because if you can look people in the eyes and make things up, I don't want to know that about you. So a 1-minute story, helping somebody out, solving a difficult case, some success, volunteering, a real event that you participated in that you can talk about for 1 minute and maintain eye contact, and that's going to be the drill. I'm going to give you a partner in a minute. We're not going to do the rest of this in groups of 3 because it's too complicated. We're just going to have you find a partner, and you'll tell that whole story in a group, in pairs, all right? So take a minute, think of a true story. Stories begin like Cinderella, right? How does Cinderella begin? Yeah, so one day, right, don't give me all the nitty-gritty detail, and there were 60 milliliters of that, and 6, don't kill me with details, docs, okay? Keep it simple, but flows toward, what was the resolution of Cinderella? Yeah, happily ever after. So I felt like a good person, or that worked out really well, okay? So how many of you still haven't got a story? Everybody has a story, good. So find a partner. Your job is to sit facing that person. So you may need to adjust. You might work across here. Face that person. I want you to tell that entire story without, this is important, without breaking eye contact. Now, it's going to be really hard for some of you. But here are a couple things about the eye contact. I'm not talking about the Charles Manson glassy-eyed serial killer stare, right? Vladimir Putin trained himself not to blink in the KGB because it's more intimidating, right? So it's okay to blink. You just can't blink to leave the building and go outside and come back again. So you can relax, you can move your head, you can blink, but stay connected 100% of the time for the whole story. And listeners, when the story's coming at you, if the person starts talking when they're looking away from you, just give them a little tiny negative feedback to indicate that they've broken eye contact with you. Very subtle, very quiet, all right? Those are your marching orders. Tell a 1-minute story, then give some feedback. Did you have to interrupt them with Or where did their eyes go? Because most of us have a default setting of where our eyes go when we're searching for information, right? They go up and to the right, or they go down to the left, or wherever they go. So take your partner, one of you, whoever wants to go first. Give some feedback about did you have to interrupt the eye contact, and then switch. And in 1.5 minutes, we will be ready to move on. How many of you found that much eye contact was a lot? A lot, yeah. It is. I mean, a full minute without looking away is pretty unrealistic. My job is to get you out of your comfort zone and push you toward being more connected. So here's the other question. How many of you were worried that it would be too much for the other person? Yeah. So my response is always, what will the other person do if it's too much? They'll look away. So they'll take care of themselves largely. You want to be there. For some of us, and I'll tell you, I was almost pathologically unable to look people in the eye when I started in this career, and I had been on Broadway. So I had people all over my life. I had a director on Broadway say to me, "MacKenzie, your eyes are wild." This was not good news for my career, right? So if you adopt this eye contact, you will discover that eventually it becomes more comfortable, it becomes part of your game. I strongly encourage you to practice it for those of you who struggle with it, because it is the most important skill for building trust. All the other stuff, the voice, the face, without eye contact, it's window dressing. It really won't matter, because you've got to be able to look people in the eye. That is the #1 skill that I have for you for the whole afternoon. So moving on, I want to talk a little bit about selling your ideas, and I'm going to give you some very brief rundown on what we would teach when we teach people to make a 1-minute pitch. Now, when I say pitch, I'm saying anyone in business who's asking for something, right? So you're asking, let's hire somebody, let's fire somebody, let's add something, let's buy something, let's change something. So it doesn't have a presentation element to it. So you could be asking a doctor with help to buy into a particular thing you want them to do. You could be asking a patient to follow a particular protocol or whatever. So here's what we're going to do. What is your main message? Now, not for nothing, I have a lot of clients who are terrible at messaging, but I will say in my own personal experience, I've only had a couple of doctors who were really good at messaging, who were able to tell me at the beginning of the meeting what the message was. Are we okay or are we not okay, right? And where are we? So if you come into a meeting and you don't have the headline written down, and I can tell you too, when my father was dying, And I had a tremendous amount of frustration about this because one doctor would come into the hospital room and say, we're going to put you into hospice. And another guy would come in and say, you're going to go home, you're going to get through this. And another guy would say, you're always going to have oxygen, but you're probably going to be, going to have to go into a nursing home. And I finally just got them all together in the hallway and said, I don't care what you guys do, but get your act together and get one message and figure out what it is and come back and tell us. Because I was so frustrated with that. And it's life and death to us, right? So if you can't figure out what the message is, then sit down for 5 minutes and say, how can I, in a concise, clear way, state what I need to state? And then it needs to be audience directed. It may change when you're dealing with one person versus another. So it's about them, it's not about you. It's going entirely toward the person you're talking to. It needs to be positive in the sense that nobody likes impending doom. Now, if you're trying to get somebody who's not doing what you need them to do, then you might have to use consequences. But I strongly prefer benefits of pursuing a particular action to consequences. Tell me the glass is half full or that the glass is full rather than the glass is shattered on the floor. Conversational, be yourself. You don't need to walk into the room and suddenly turn into, I don't know, warm, fuzzy person who you're not. I don't think for those of you who are more analytical, who are more buttoned down, be yourself. But make sure that you're thinking about the other person's needs when you craft that message. Memorable, keep it simple, no jargon. This is fatal. The jargon in the medical industry is just off the charts. So throw away all the acronyms, get rid of all the heavy language, and boil it down into layman's terms. Give concrete examples or analogies. Tell people about other examples of where this has worked or been effective. Use what I would call the theory of social proof to get people to trust you. In other words, other lemmings have leapt off this particular cliff, so you can feel safe leaping off this particular cliff. That's what the theory of social proof is. That's why it's so useful to tell stories when you're trying to overcome resistance. This is the persuasive outline that I would teach if I were teaching you a presentation skills one-day course. It begins with a setup. Why are we here today? Putting people into context. This is what we're here to discuss, and perhaps raising the stakes a little bit. Then, right up front, this is what I'm asking you to do. This is what I want you to do. In the old days, 20 years ago, when I first started in this industry, you could walk people through all the data and all the information and build a case like a lawyer does, and then at the very end say, so naturally, you can now see that what you need to do is blah, blah, blah. There's no time for that. People don't have an attention span for that these days. So if you are asking another physician for something you need them to do for you, or you're asking someone at the hospital to change something, you need to get right to the verb. Not immediately. Don't land on them like a ton of bricks. We need to fix this, right? But set it up with the setup, and then this is what I'm asking you to do or change, right up front. Then what are the benefits of following that? Why is it a good thing? Again, it's okay to bring consequences in if somebody is fighting with you, but we prefer positive benefits to consequences. Then you got to prove it. So you may need data or a story or whatever support information you might bring to this idea that you're trying to make happen to back it up. It's not enough to say, I'm the doc, it's my way or the highway, this is what we need to do. I mean, when we're how many of you have kids, right? At 2 years old, the kid discovers the magic of the question, why? Yeah, you got to prove it. So just saying this is the reality, this is what we have to do, nobody, no matter how smart, is willing to accept that without proof. Then you summarize. So what we like is to have XYZ happen, and these are the reasons that's going to work, and you might, as you break down the action steps, you might turn it over to the other person and say, so how's that going to work for you? What's the plan for making this happen? And force them to regurgitate it to you. When I'm delegating, and I don't trust or know the quality of the person's listening skills that I'm talking to, or their ability to do what I'm asking them to do, I ask them to do a task, and then I say, now just so that I know that I was clear, can you play that back for me? Or go back to your desk and summarize it in an email and shoot that off to me, because I don't want to come to this in a week's time and discover that we had a disconnect. Put it on yourself. Maybe you weren't clear. If they can't play it back effectively, then maybe you weren't clear. Every time I'm involved with coaching somebody who's terrible at giving feedback to their underlings and employees, or, depending, doesn't matter where you are, it turns out that most of those people are really rotten at delegating too. So this will save you a lot. The other thing would be to say, if anything should happen that makes it clear to you that you're not going to achieve this, the minute that you know that, you must let me know that. Because if we come to whatever deadline and it's passed and we haven't got what we need, it's too late for me to make any other arrangements. So if something comes up and you're not able to get this set up for us in a timely fashion, the minute you know that's not happening, you must let me know. Active listening. You've probably heard time and time again that listening is the key to building relationships. It's the bridge building. Who are the people we like in our lives? They're the people who listen to us. If you become a good listener to your patients, they will trust you more. It's absolutely clear, but it's not a passive sport. You don't sit there like a lump on a log. This is the noise in your head that keeps you from being a good listener. The clock is ticking, time, anxiety, maybe this isn't going to work, burnout, oh God, if one more person says that to me, I'm going to have to kill myself, right? Distraction, impatience. That's the fog in your head. What I will say in this device-driven world we live in is that multitasking is a myth. You cannot listen to somebody and be on your device. When you're with someone and you're in that conversation, nothing else can exist in the world. The heart of listening skills is open-ended questions. How many of you were familiar with the concept of an open versus closed question? An open question always begins with what, how, and why. Potentially who, where, and when. These are the reporter's questions from journalism school. But if the question begins, is there, are there, did you, can you, should we, isn't there, haven't you, didn't you, it's not an open-ended question. And the difference is that when I ask an open-ended question, it's like throwing the Velcro ball at you and it sticks on you and you have to talk. Because if I ask you a closed-ended question, you can go, yep, or nope, or I don't know. But when I ask an open-ended question, it forces information. When you're talking, you're not learning anything. I read years ago a study of the average doctor's visit. The patient comes in with like 6 things they want to say, and within a minute and 30 seconds, the doctor starts talking, and the patient walks out with 4 of those things unsaid. Right? I experienced this. I went to a specialist. I had a list of like 8 things, and I said to her, I have a list. And she said, we don't need your list. And she ignored my list, and I never said 4 of those damn things. You've got to ask the questions. All right. Here are some examples that I created for Robin. What do you recommend I do for this patient? What other complications are presented? Notice those are wide open. Now, an open-ended question doesn't mean you're stupid or you're not prepared, because you can make a positioning statement and say, the blood pressure level's gone from here to here in a very short period of time. Why do you think that's going on, right? So you can ask a wide open question, but you can set it up with a statement that puts the information on the head of a pin. Why did you order that particular test? How can we improve the patient outcome? How did the patient respond? These are generic examples just to give you an idea. Again, you can be much more specific as long as the question begins with what, why, or how. The one thing you want to avoid is cherry picking. Well, how can we improve the patient outcome? Should we try physical therapy or maybe a drug regimen? I'm kind of handing you what I'm hoping you're going to say, and maybe they think something entirely different is operating here. And I'll never hear it because I offered them A or B, and it might be Z. So what is communication style? It's your natural behavior. It's your strength. We want you to refine it to succeed. And it's not an IQ test. Very smart people in every category all the way around. For full disclosure, I am also an amiable. I have equal distributions on a secondary level between analytical and expressive, although the expressive is the one everybody notices. And I am not a driver. I have a driver score of like 7. Guess what style my business partner, Miss Brown, is? Driver, 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 off the charts. She is an off-the-charts driver. So when we talk about style, typically, people's strengths are next to each other in the grid. If you have 2 high scores, you'd be heavy and analytical in driving or driving and expressive. It's very rare to have someone equally strong in analytical and expressive, because it would be sort of like, we need to get down to business. We're having fun. We need to get down to business. We're having fun. We do see amiable driver combinations, and frankly, I would think that to survive the medical profession, you would need to have a fair amount of driver at times to get through medical school and do all the things that you need to do. Now, if your scores are over 29, then that's really something to look at in terms of a score that's fairly strong. If you have a very low score, that's going to provide a serious Achilles heel for you. Those people will be a mystery to you. If your scores are evenly distributed, and I had someone a couple of weeks ago who was 21, 21, 19, 19, that's a wonderful thing, but it's also deeply confusing to the rest of us because it doesn't feel you're on anybody's team, right? So that's a little bit odd because nobody knows quite how to read you, but it means you could successfully move into any one of the categories. And let me say this before I continue any further. We're all capable of being all 4 of these things. What we're talking about is your comfort zone. Where is it that you live? What is the thing you like? If your back was up against the wall, what would you revert to? And in terms of this versus Myers-Briggs or other psychological testing, this is a very surface external test. It's about how you like to communicate and how you like to be communicated with. So it's external stuff. I discovered recently one of my law firm clients is doing a thinking styles test, and I took that test and discovered that I'm a deeply analytical thinker. I'm equally a thinker, but as a communicator, nobody gets me as analytical. I come across as expressive, and some of it's my history in the theater, and some of it's just naturally who I am. So what do these models mean? The language, other people use words like red, gold, green, or blue, or diamond, ruby, emerald, etc. to describe these qualities because we don't want these words to be judgmental to you. There's no good and no bad between one style and another. But what it does do, style, is depersonalize some of the sting of other people's behavior. So that when someone is behaving in a particular way, those of you who just came in, what you're going to want to do is fill out the test, and maybe somebody can give you a hand with that and make sure that we get you on track with it, and we'll check with what your style is a little later. We'll deal with some communication style dimensions now. So going top to bottom, on the top, the analyticals and the drivers like control, but they do it a little bit differently. The analyticals control with data and information. I need another study, I need I need more data, I need more information, and I'm not willing to sign on to or even say anything until it's perfect, and every T is crossed and every I is dotted, or I'm not having it. Henry Kissinger famously used to send memos back to the State Department with a note on them that said, "Is that the best you can do? Is that the best you can do? Is that the best you can do?" And when somebody wrote yes on it, he'd go, "Good, then I'll read it. Because if it's not perfect, I don't want to read it." The drivers, their level of control is basically they like to be driving the boat. They like to be in charge. They like to be the one moving things forward. Then on the bottom, we have emotion. We have amiable versus expressive. So the amiables will ask you, "How are you?" And they wait for the answer. They listen to the whole answer, and they care about the answer. On the expressive side, these people are the talkers. They like to process it out loud. If you're having a party, you want a lot of expressives to come to that party. There'll be all kinds of fun going on. There'll be a conga line and party games you never even imagined. So the people on the left, they control and ask for information, and they ask about your feelings. The people on the right are more external in terms of delivering, driving, telling people what to do, telling people what they think. Here we have some style characteristics, starting in the analytical, which is the blue corner on the left. Prudent, logical, and low-key. These are the bean counters. These are the keepers of the rules, the regulations. They're formally dressed. They're more appropriately behaved. Everything is comme il faut, and we have to do things exactly according to the way they're supposed to be done. They're careful decision makers. Again, they won't let it go. I had a program up at Welch's, and I had a very analytical client. It took us 2 years to get that program to happen. We had to do proposals, revisions of proposals, revisions of proposals, case studies, revisions of the case studies, et cetera, et cetera. I was ready to kill myself by the time we finally did it. The drivers, independent, dominating, and decisive. These are the people who check it off their list. The tremendous satisfaction that comes from what are our next steps? What are we getting done here? What are we going to do today? What did you do for me today? And I don't mean 5 minutes ago, but right now. Let's get it done. Let's move it along. They're always moving the ball down the field. They are fast-paced, task and results-oriented. God help you if you're a very young driver and you don't have anything or anybody to be in charge of. That will be very frustrating for you, because you like to be moving it forward. On the bottom, we have the amiables. These are dependable people. I always call them the glue that holds everything together, because they're taking care of people's feelings. They're underneath the force field in the emotional universe, and they're dealing with the resonance of how people feel. They're supportive and respectful. They're open and pliable. Now, if you trust me, you will allow yourself to change toward my point of view. If you don't trust me, that is never going to happen. Then, confrontation averse. How many of you amiables would rather call someone at their office at midnight on Sunday night and leave a voicemail rather than have a tough conversation that might involve some conflict, right? Anything to avoid a nasty or shouting match situation. That's just painful, it hurts. They're relationship-oriented. You want to get to know people when they're amiable. You want to build trust slowly. Take them to lunch. Get to know their kids' names, their dog's name. Get the whole relationship thing going before we ever try to make things move forward. Now, on the expressive side, these are the charisma people. They have lots of sizzle, lots of pizzazz, lots of energy. They're creative. If we're stuck for an idea, all eyes in the room will swivel to the expressive, and she'll just start firing off ideas like popcorn, and she won't care which one that we take as long as she gets credit for it, and it's exciting and fun. Then optimistic and people-oriented. These are the people where it's all about relationship. It's all about relationship. We'll order in pizza. We'll stay all night. It's going to be like a party. Who cares? We'll just have a good time. I have some iconic examples. Don't panic when you see who's in your corner. We have Seinfeld on the top. We have some presidents underneath. So when you watch a sitcom, they deliberately put someone of each of these 4 categories in a very strong dose, because the audience members can relate to at least one of the characters. And then there's always conflict between the 4 characters. So has everybody seen a Seinfeld episode recently? I mean, they're in 7,000 reruns every day. So George is the analytical. He's the worrywart. He sits in the diner. He's obsessively planning a date. He says, Jerry, I'm going to say this, I'm going to say that, I'm going to do this, I'm going to put my arm around her, we're going to go here. Then he gets on the date, and the girl doesn't follow along with his game plan. Does he go with the flow? No, he gets up from the table, goes to the payphone, and calls Jerry. Jerry, she's not going along with the plan. He lives in endless frustration, George, that nothing works out according to his weird plans. Then we have Elaine, the driver. Does anybody remember the episode where Elaine sees George wearing a toupee? What does she do? Throws it out his head, rips it off his head, throws it out the window. That looks terrible, right? Everybody else is dancing around it. They're not saying anything. Action woman Elaine gets it out of the room. Kramer. What does Kramer do? Every episode, he has a new scheme, a new dream. He's going to be in a Woody Allen movie. He turns his living room into the set of the Dick Cavett show, and if you come to my house, you get to be a guest. Won't that be cool? He comes flying into Jerry's apartment with all this out-of-control energy, right, which is where the comedy comes from. Who's the amiable? Where do they hang out? Jerry's apartment. Do they knock? He could be on a date. He could be making out with a girl on his couch, and they come flying right in, talking to him like she's not even there. There are no boundaries. When I was in my first office environment, I will tell you, I was everybody's mentor. And I was in sales. I own my own business. I'm still in sales. But now if somebody interrupts me and I wasn't planning on meeting with them, I do what my business partner does and say, hey, can you come back at 11? I'm working on something right now. When she did that to me, because she's a driver, I hired her, right? I was like, oh, you can do that? You can actually protect your own time and tell people not to interrupt you? What is that? How does that work? Then we have presidents. We've had presidents of every stripe. So if you think of the first President Bush, remember Dana Carvey's impression? Wouldn't be prudent, right? The charts, the graphs. Before we go to liberate Kuwait, 7 months ahead of time, 172 allies have signed off on the war plans. The financing is arranged in advance. The thing is a surgical strike. We go in, we kick Saddam out of Kuwait, we stop, we come home. Mission accomplished, right? The son, on the other hand, I'll go it alone. I'm the decider. Mission accomplished? Oops, maybe not, right? But this decisive quality of George W. Bush is one of the things that got him elected. Clinton, well, just say people person, right? He's relationship oriented. Don't go there. Okay, go there. I don't care. I'm going to have to put Bill Clinton up here now. Well, maybe. We'll see. Reagan, I know. No, we won't go there. Reagan had this warmth, right? Tip O'Neill, who was the Nancy Pelosi of his day, Tip O'Neill from Boston, met with Reagan in 1981 for the first time, and he said, I could kill myself, but I love this guy. I want to go have a beer with him, right? Because Reagan was this warm, grandfatherly presence. Let's make America great again. The whole thing was about emotions and taking care of people. Now, Reagan could be very much a driver, too, behind the scenes. And I don't know that you can become president without being a driver. But the whole communication style was this warm, friendly, lovable guy. So build on your strengths. The analyticals see the whole picture. They give accurate information. They list the pros and cons, every shade of gray, right? I was just reading something about John Kerry and that whole moment, because why the Democrats keep nominating all of these analytical types. Like you think about Adlai Stevenson or Michael Dukakis or Jimmy Carter or Al Gore or John Kerry. They were all analyticals, right? And so when you think about John Kerry trying to explain why he voted for the war but against the funding, it was all these shades of gray and deep levels of information, and most of the rest of us just don't understand shades of gray. I'm going to have to stop talking about shades of gray now, aren't I? Oh, damn. All right. So when that information comes from an analytical, though, you know you can trust it. It's going to be the right information. Jimmy Carter, classic example, an engineer who became president. They said he read every document that left the White House, and that, in the end, turned out to be his downfall because he didn't have his eye on the big picture, I think, on some level. Then the drivers lead the discussion. They build and disagree. The good news about the drivers is they aren't the least bit worried about saying that is the worst idea I have ever heard, right? And for the amiables, we're like, oh my God, that hurts so bad, right? But think about it, amiables. When someone does that, it's like playing cards with someone who says, well, these are all the cards in my hand. This is everything I'm thinking. I just told you my biggest obstacle, hammered you with it, I got nothing left. So when a driver does that, it's really a gift. Drivers are truth tellers, and they're forceful, and they lead, and they disagree, and that you should consider a gift, even if it may be hard when it's coming at you, my amiable friends. The expressives inspire people. They get people excited. They tell stories. They engage. I teach storytelling to every senior executive that I coach. Storytelling is a gift. If you want people to follow your lead and they're resisting you, stories are the magic bullet. Again, because of that theory of social proof. Because if I could throw all the statistics in the world at an issue, and you have your story and your worldview, you're going to stick with it. I won't change your worldview unless I can convince you that I've walked in your shoes and you can relate to me in a way that that story convinces you of that. That's the gift that the expressives bring to the table. They generate ideas. The amiables seek suggestions. They ask a lot of questions. They build consensus. They uncover problems. I haven't entirely made up my mind about President Obama, but I know that this amiable corner of wanting collaboration, wanting participation was a big part of the initial pitch. But I've also coached a couple of people who work for President Obama in Washington, and I know that he has a rigidity about his thinking, so I'm suggesting he's probably analytical and amiable in pretty much equal qualities. Then, watch out for your style pitfalls. Here's the bad news. So for my analyticals, you get buried in detail. It's exhaustive. Don't tell me everything. If I ask you what time it is, please don't tell me the history of the watch or the clock. Starting with the Chinese in the year 300. No. What's the headline, right? Analysis paralysis. The challenge is that analyticals sit on their hands in a meeting and they hold back and they don't want to say anything because it isn't perfect. And they wait for it to be perfect and they wait for it to be perfect. And meanwhile, they're going, I was going to say that. I didn't say that. Oh, they said that. Oh, they said that. Oh, they contributed that. I got nothing, right? So if you wait around, my thing is just let it go when it's 80% good enough analyticals and it will be good enough. 80% to you is better than 100% for the rest of us, because you're perfectionists. The drivers can be impatient, domineering, and dominate. Now here's the deal, my drivers. I know that this is a noble effort to get the job done. But occasionally you leave bodies littered along the way. And you know, you all, if my standard joke is I put 4 drivers into a room, I give them 55 minutes to make a decision about something. They spend 52 minutes arguing about who's going to be in charge. It takes them 30 seconds to make a decision, and then they go out for a beer, happy as clams. So when a driver says to you, it's just business, this isn't personal, right? Guess what? It really isn't personal to them. It really is business. Now, when my business partner, who's a 35 driver, says to me, this is just business, I say, no, you know what, Gene? This is all emotion, because everything is emotional in some context. But I know that that's her need. And even though we went to school together, she's been directing me, by the way, for 35 years, because she directed me in a production of Dames at Sea in 1981 at Dartmouth, right? So we're old friends, but the style disconnect between her personality and mine still flares up to this day. And we have owned this business for 10 years. And on Monday morning, she forces herself to say, now, before I get to my list of 4 things, how was your weekend? And I go, well, Gene, why don't we just get through your list? And she says, oh, thank God. We can talk about the social stuff later, right? So the challenge with my expressives is that they will be impulsive and they will overtalk. There's so much fun and so much sizzle that in the service of doing all of that socializing, we forget there was a wait, why were we here again? Or they will continue talking and processing, and we never collect the idea and figure out what our decision is and come to terms with it. In terms of the amiable, the danger is you hold back and you cave. Now, you hold back for a different reason than the analyticals. The analyticals hold back because they want to get it right and it better be perfect. The amiables hold back because they don't want to step on toes, they don't want to offend anybody, they don't want to hurt any feelings, and they don't want to really come out and say this is a problem. And then they're talking about a problem, and people are like, it sounds fine, but I get the sense that you're uneasy about something. So actually stating what the problem is for my amiable folks, that's a huge issue. I had to be coached to send my food back, to get a different hotel room when I check into a hotel. Because guess what, amiables? When you check into the hotel and it's the room by that noisy thing on the roof that's clanging, if you go downstairs and you say, I'm sorry, I'd like a room that doesn't have a clangy air conditioner outside of it, they give you another room. And they don't even care. And you don't have to apologize. I spent half my life apologizing until I got steeped in this stuff. Stop apologizing. You don't need to most of the time. For analyticals, so how many analyticals do I have now that everybody's in the room? Those of you who came in late, you'll want to find the test and take the test. This stuff will become clear to you later. You want to focus on the headlines. Be more expressive and decide sooner. So figure out what is the main takeaway message and lighten up a little bit. You tend to listen like your dog just died. That straight face of, the sour puss, right? Smile a little bit and nod. As a listener, Take your chin, just like this, my analyticals, and go like this. Right? And your world will change. Probably your relationship at home will change tremendously. Drivers, exercise patience, consider other opinions, ask more questions. Look, I know you're smart, and I know you know what the right thing to do is. But other people like it when you ask them what they should do. And they do a better job when they participate in the solution with you. So stop dictating and directing and get people engaged and get people on board by asking more questions. And don't jump right to the solution. Ask a few of those open-ended questions. Hold back a little bit. Give the patient or the other doctor time to engage. For my expressives, you need a game plan. You're going to wing it. You can't wing your whole life. But if there's an important thing you need to do, write out a game plan and stick to it. And restrain your energy. Here's the thing that happens to me, right? I was an actor. I can be very expressive. So if I get in front of a group like this and you sit there like a lump on a log, like a giant painted backdrop, what happens to me and my expressiveness is I get louder, faster, funnier, louder, faster, funnier, like this. Yeah, na, 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 na. And the analyticals are sitting there going, this is horrifying. Stop it. It's so dangerous to me, right? The expressive energy is freaking out the analytical people. They need you to chill. For my amiables, offer your opinion sooner, use direct language, and pump up your energy. Now, there's some very important points here. In terms of the meeting, if this is a meeting, here's the beginning of the meeting, here's the end of the meeting. At the beginning of the meeting, you can say, nice day today. Finally, some good weather. And you're Einstein, right? By the end of the meeting, you better have the cure for cancer. Because as the meeting goes on, this is how smart your contribution has, my amiables, in order to be heard and to be effective. The longer the meeting goes on, everybody else contributes all the ideas and shapes and forms and adds. And if you're holding back, by the time the meeting's over and you haven't said anything. So set a time limit and then force yourself to insert yourself into the interaction. Use somebody's name. So Dr. Pedowitz, I'm going to pick on you. Rob's going yak, 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 yak. Eventually he will have to take a breath. And you go, Rob, that is so fascinating. I was also thinking we should talk about this, right? So that your opinion gets heard. So offer your opinion sooner. Use directive language. So we do have quite a few amiables in the room. The thing we do is use permission language. I just might want to have maybe a little conversation about, just a little bit of a kind of if it's okay with you, I don't want to step on toes here or rock the boat, but could we talk about maybe my getting just a raise? Yeah, what do my drivers think when they hear that? They're like, lock and load, right? Tell me what you want. Pump up your energy. This means more voice, more energy in the smile. That's for my analyticals and for my amiables. Adapt your style. So it's one thing, as a life issue, if you have a really high score in one of these quadrants, you need to constantly work on pulling back in that. My mantra is you give people what they need in order to get what you want from them, to be more successful. For my amiables, I will say you give people what they need because it's a nice thing to do. All right? But for everybody else, it's a bit Machiavellian. You get into somebody's comfort zone, and then they relax around you. They just feel like it's going to be okay. So how do you know who they are? You meet someone for the first time. You don't know these patients. You don't know these other doctors. You look at their emotional responsiveness, or you look at their outward assertiveness. Emotional responsiveness means, do they live in their head, or do they live in their gut of the emotional force field? Are they feelers, or are they thinkers? And you can listen to their language. The analyticals would say, thinking about this logically, we have to analyze, right? And the amiables and expressive will be saying, from my gut, I just know in my heart, I trust, I believe. The language is different because they're sensitive in a different way. Then we have outward assertiveness. And the beautiful news for you about figuring somebody out is these run differently on the grid. So emotional responsiveness versus being in your heart or your head runs across the top and the bottom, and outward assertiveness runs left to right. So outward assertiveness means, are they more laid back and held back and reserved? Or are they more in your face and connected? I don't really like the words extrovert or introvert, but extroverted or introvert are easy ways to put a label on that. So let's talk about emotional responsiveness. On the top, we have our analyticals and our drivers. Those analyticals have that reserved facial expression. They make great poker players. Expressives don't play poker. Drivers talk about tasks and goals. What's our goal? What are we going to do? What are we checking off of our list? The driver's going to come in, and you will know right away that they are results-oriented. On the bottom of the grid, these people live in that emotional force field, the feeling field from the amiables. I don't know, I just don't trust it. I believe, I think, I'm feeling it. And then the expressives, you'll see it on their face. They use gestures, facial expressions, vocal variety. I had an assistant, my first admin that I ever had named Kaya, and she was really expressive. And on Monday morning, I come in with my color-coded list of 52 things because I was terrified of not getting this job right that we had to do. But on Monday morning, I needed, as painful as it was, to say, Hiya, how was your weekend? Did you have a good time? And she would bubble and sizzle about going to the Hamptons and meeting some guy. And then after 5 minutes of that, she could focus. But if I didn't give her that chance to process out loud, I didn't really have her attention. So we were more effective by my giving her that moment of expressiveness. Outward assertiveness runs left to right. Now, introverts used to have sort of a bad name. It seemed like it was not a good thing to be an introvert, but there are all these wonderful books now and all these great things around on Facebook about being an introvert. I read the book Quiet, and I'm married to an introvert, so it was really helpful to me. So introverts are soft-spoken. The analyticals would be lower-voiced. They'll be a little more physically restrained, again, formally dressed, the button-down collar. The amiable will be slower-moving and a little bit quieter as well. On the right, we have the drivers. Somebody comes in, gives you a bone-crushing handshake and goes, Bob Smith, damn glad to meet you. Looking you square in the eye, bless you. You know what you're dealing with right away. I have a client who broke Miss Brown's hand. He broke her hand at Stryker. He took her hand, he broke her hand. She screamed. And it's still, 10 years later, he's still mortified about it. But you can tell those drivers when they walk in who you're dealing with. The expressives are fast-paced and energetic. You'll be chasing them down the hall. They'll be like, boom, ba boom, ba 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 ba. Hey, Bob. Hey, Tom. Hey, do you have a good week? Hey, there'll be all this social energy as they fly down the hall of the hospital. And you'll be running after them. Now, when you figure this out, take a moment right now and think about somebody that is just your Achilles heel. You met them, and everything they need seems to be like, why do they need this thing that I don't understand? I don't get it. I mean, if you meet someone who is the same style as you, you're bonded at the hip. It's like, driver, yeah, we're good, let's go. Okay. But these other people are mysterious to you. So think of a real person. Now just let me back up. Are they on the top or are they on the bottom? That person you always struggle with, that you just never seem to figure out what they need or want. Are they on the top or the bottom? Then, are they on the right or the left? Are they louder? Are they quieter? Are they more assertive? Are they more restrained? And you have it. So what do we do with that information? For the analyticals, so how many of you chose someone, when you thought about it, you broke it down, you figured out they were an analytical? Show of hands. Just a few? All right, with that person, what are you going to do? You're going to slow down and speak more quietly. Chill on the energy level. Bring a game plan and stick to it. Prepare thoroughly. There had better not be a typo, or the whole thing goes in the trash. Ask more questions. The reason you need to ask questions with the analyticals is because they tend to hoard information. They gather information, but they don't like to share it. Information is power to an analytical. So you have to ask them a lot of questions to find out what they're really thinking. And stick to the schedule. Time isn't money to them. Time is life's blood. Like time, they're always counting time and divvying it out very carefully. Then, how many of you wound up with a driver on that list of somebody you've always struggled with? How many of you chose a driver? A few people. With a driver, speak with energy, Turn up the volume on your voice. Use direct language. Stay on point and on time. Time is money. We got things to do. We're moving things along for the drivers. Take notes. I had a boss, Myrna, at my old firm. She was training a new employee. This woman is wonderful and brilliant. She's telling her about the job in her office. Maria, you're going to do this. Maria, you're going to do that. After about 10 minutes, she picked up a pad and a pen and said, Maria, take notes. I'll feel better. Right? The drivers want you to be accountable. They want to know that you heard them and that you got it. And focus on the result. What are we going to make happen? What is our end game here? How many of you wound up with an expressive on that choice? So you picked an expressive as the person you were thinking about. So ramp up your energy, engage with lots of eye contact, smile and nod, open up and talk, let them brainstorm out loud. Give them their chance to process and bubble and sizzle and do all those things they need to do. For the amiables, did anybody choose an amiable for this person? With an amiable person, you slow down and speak more quietly. Again, like the analytical, you engage them socially, get to know them on a social level. Draw them out and nod, so you ask a question. Here's the trick. When you ask a question to the two groups on the left, you count to 5, my drivers and expressives. You go, so how have you been? 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000, 4, 1,000, 5, 1,000. Because most of the drivers and expressives, you'll go, so how have you been? Well, I've been fine, and blah, 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 blah. We'll never hear the answer, right? So the analyticals want to make sure they get the answer perfect, and the amiables want to take care of you with the answer. That's why you need to count to 5 and wait. Include everybody. The funny thing about the amiables is you'll be worrying about everybody. You'll say, oh, he picked on Rob. Is Rob okay? I hope Rob's all right with that, because justice and fairness is very important. So if you appear to be dismissive of someone in the room or not taking care of someone in the room or just ignoring someone in the room, that's a deep offense to the amiable, even if you're not doing it to them. To gain commitment, what do you do to make sure you can get results from each style? With the analyticals, minimize risk, put it in writing, and give them time to look at it, approve it, fix it, change it, revise it, etc. With the drivers, stress achievement, results. What are we going to do today? Let them feel in control. Give them autonomy or the illusion of autonomy. You say, you know, you're going to be driving this whole thing. I'll be here to back you up. We'll have a whole team of minions and lackeys pulling together to make sure that this happens for you. With the expressive, you want to encourage them to participate, get their creativity, affirm them publicly, and share your passion. There's a very big difference between the affirmation for the amiable and the expressive. The expressive wants the big party, the public acclaim, the applause at the meeting, which would horrify the amiables. They're like, oh, no, that would be too embarrassing for me, right? So we want sparklers on the cake for the expressives, but for the amiables, you want a quiet, private thank you. We're so grateful to you for the wonderful work you did. Thank you so much, privately. Then for the amiables, make them comfortable, don't push, and show fairness and respect. So for those of you who took the test, and I know some of you may not have gotten to it, do you feel like we got you in the right category? Yeah? Are we on target with this information? What questions would you have? I have a few minutes now, and I'm gonna ask you to do an exercise in just a second. What questions about style do you have? Let me add one thing that I think might be useful to you. Typically, when we get into a relationship with someone, we often choose someone who is in that score that is our lowest score quadrant. So we tend to be attracted to our opposites because that person completes you and has things and gifts that you don't have, and those things drive you crazy for the rest of your life together. All right, any other questions about style? Okay, so what I would like to do is this. You have that persuasive pitch in the handout, right? On the last page of the handout? Oh, you don't have the right pitch. Okay. Take the back page of the handout, the blank page, and let me just zoom back. I want you to make a recommendation, a real-time, something going on right now, whether you're asking for something from a hospital administrator, whether you're running into another doctor and asking for their help or their participation or a change in behavior, whether you're asking a patient to follow a particular something or go through with a particular procedure or whatever that might be, I want you to come up with a real example that you can share with your person. You can change the name of the person so that we don't offend the regulatory gods in Washington with HIPAA and all that. But what we'll do is we'll use this flow of ideas. So sketch out a few bullet points about this idea on that back of that paper, just key words. The trick here is not to write a script, because scripted anything is the hardest in the world to do. You're not presenting this idea, you're just going to run through it, right? So jot a few words in this order, and it's no problem to do what I call signposting. Let me just give one little bit of value to you if you're making a quick pitch to get something to happen. In my experience, 20 years of doing this, powerful people signpost their ideas. They come in and they say, hey, it's great to see you. Here's my main message that I want to offer up today. There are 3 things I'm going to cover that relate to that. Number 1, number 2, and number 3. So in this case, that's the benefits. So I'm looking for you to put this patient on a course of whatever antibiotic, and these are the reasons I think we need to do that right now. Right? We're going to get at this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. Then you go through number 1, number 2, and number 3, and you come back to the conclusion and you say, so what I'm asking for is this for the following 3 reasons. What do you say? Right? So the conclusion restates the recommendation and benefits in 1 sentence. So take a moment, scope out a real recommendation that you would make about a real patient, change the name, and that should take you about 40 seconds to a minute. You might not have a lot of heavy proof here. You might have some level of data or proof that you want to bring 1 fact or 2 in to back up those benefits. Am I clear? You're ruminating. All right? In a minute, I'm going to ask you to pick a partner and ask this person to play that audience, whoever it is, hospital administrator, doctor, patient, nurse, whomever. As long as it's real to you, that's the thing to me. Don't make it playtime. Choose a thing that's going on right now where you have to have a difficult conversation with someone. You say, you know what? I think we're going to have to do X, Y, Z, and these are the reasons I think that's important. Right? The only way that what I teach really lands on people is if it's real for them. I don't believe in generic case studies or fantasy land or, let's recommend that we move our practice down to Bermuda so that we can play golf with Mike Bloomberg on Friday afternoons, right? Who cares about that? That's playtime. So make it real. I'm going to use this Communicating with Presence and Impact reinforcement plan on the back. And I want you to watch something I call the breathing arc. So the breathing arc is the distance between each pair of eyes that I'm looking at and my notes. And all I'm allowed to do when I go down to my notes is inhale all the way down and all the way back up. And then the words on the page are what I would call a triggering device. So it's a memory device to bring things into recall so that I can simply talk about them seamlessly. So watch the way I interact by breathing and looking down and only talking when I'm looking someone in the eye. So here we go. Thanks so much for coming. I'd like to review some of the issues that we discussed at this afternoon's seminar. The program was called Communicating with Presence and Impact. It lasted about 2 hours. The first concept we covered was transforming your presence. What are all the things physically, verbally, and vocally that contribute to presence, including breathing from your diaphragm, taking a deep breath that goes down into here, and supporting your voice with that big tank full of air. Focusing for 5 seconds per person, landing on someone and staying with them until a natural stopping place, taking a breath and shifting over to another person. Sitting forward and straight, getting your hands apart, open at the table, leaning a little bit forward so that you always present an open, neutral picture for them. Take a firm stance. You see how this works? I look down. I land those few triggering words in a very simple sentence. I'm not rewriting what's here, by the way. When you write notes, just stick with the notes you wrote. Don't be creative, don't try to think. Because if I have to rewrite, did you notice I was doing that with my slides all day? That I would turn in the breathing arc and go, here's a bullet, here's another bullet. Let me talk about these bullets, right? Look, another bullet, let me say that bullet, right? So I'm not rewriting what's on the slide, but I'm always out here talking to you. I'm just kind of handing off the ideas. They come through me and they land on the audience. So that's how you're going to deliver your pitch to your partner right now. When you feel like you need more content, pause, look down at your extremely clearly written and intelligible notes that I know you will have taken. Why am I even saying that? And then connect with the pair of eyes across the table or next to you and deliver the next thought and let it flesh out with a little bit of an example. Deliver the whole thing. And again, partners, if your partner starts talking while their eyes are on the paper or their eyes are up in the air, just give them a little bit of a, stay with me. So that they're always talking when they're looking you squarely in the eye and yet delivering real content. Does everybody understand what the exercise is? Okay, can we bring the slide back here? Maybe? So, you'll use your outline, you'll deliver it to a partner, and they'll give you feedback about your eye contact, the focus, your posture. Are you gesturing and smiling or using the appropriate facial energy? And was there a key message? Is there a headline here, the clear recommendation? Do I know what you're really asking for? Okay? Are there any questions? I just want you with one other person who's close to you. If you're sitting off by yourself, come find someone to practice with. You should do this for about a minute, get about 30 seconds worth of feedback, and then switch, and then we will wrap it up, and we will be at 5 o'clock. All right? Off you go, folks. How did this thing go, relaying a real idea to a partner and maintaining eye contact like this? Yeah. The key thing is to keep the breathing going. Breathe, pause. Whenever you need it, look down and grab the next idea. So to wrap it up, I want to express tremendous thanks to Rob and to the whole board for asking me in here. They took a risk bringing me in, and they felt like this is their big objective for the year. I have sincerely enjoyed working with all of you this afternoon. The key takeaway for all of you is you're not magically transformed by spending 2 hours in my presence. I know. You have to go out and do this. I had a couple of conversations with people who really struggle with the eye contact. You've got to practice it. And the only one who can drive that is you. There's no magic wand here. You've got to find ways to do that. And so if you apply these skills, what will you discover? You will discover the payoff. You'll build the relationship, you'll build the bridge, it will enhance your relationships within the hospital, with your patients, and I guarantee you people will notice.